Welcome to our special coverage today, where we bring you the latest stories shaping our world. In a decisive move, the US forces launched precision strikes against Houthis targets in Yemen, targeting command centers and advanced weapons facilities. This action follows a series of Houthi attacks on US and Israeli vessels in the Red Sea, further intensifying regional tensions. The Houthis have vowed to continue their defense, signaling a potential escalation in the conflict. Now, the Washington Post has reported that Israel faces a growing challenge as Houthi missile attacks from Yemen continue, even as other regional conflicts have calmed. Despite Israeli airstrikes targeting key infrastructure, the attacks persist, exposing gaps in Israel's defense strategies. The escalating Houthi strikes disrupts Israel's economy, affecting foreign tourism and trade routes through the Red Sea. These attacks highlight the broader struggle against Iran-backed forces as Israel struggles to deter this distant yet resilient threat. Limited intelligence and the geographical distance have constrained Israel's military response, raising concerns about a prolonged confrontation with no immediate solution. And providing more analysis about the most recent updates concerning the situation in Yemen, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri, an editorial director in Al-Ahram newspaper. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Qnews. And how do recent US precision strikes on Houthi command centers in Yemen impact regional stability?
Good evening to you and to the viewers. For sure, the American strikes as well as the previous Israeli ones has played a role in demolishing a lot of the military capabilities of the Houthis, especially that the ones made by the US and Britain using the Tomahawk missiles has really demolished some of the ballistic platforms missiles of Houthis. The most latest of which was the day before. This has led like 5 million Israelis to go into the shelters, and so the Americans and the British before the end of the Biden administration is trying to inflict as much as harm possible on the Houthis by attacking the missile platforms. Over the last 2 days, the attacks by the US might be the last and might continue till the 20th of January when Trump comes, and then we will see how Trump manages the use of force against the Houthis, because the Israeli side and the Israeli commanders have said that with the arrival of Trump, things will be changed regarding the equation in the region and inflicting more harm on the Houthis, and this will be actually a harm to the Yemenis who are under the capture of the Yemeni Houthi Authority.
Right. What are the strategic, or what could be the strategic implications of Houthis' vow to continue defending Yemen after the US strikes?
Unfortunately, such operations did not inflict much harm on Israel. When you launch a missile every week or few days, it only harmed one Israeli over the whole attacks since November of last year till some days before. Only one Israeli was injured. It's usually fallen in open areas and few impact on the Israeli infrastructure, but the losses are disastrous on the Yemenis and harming the world economy by disrupting the navigation in Bab el-Mandab and economic losses to all the countries on the Red Sea. And the Houthi attacks are not harming Israel, while this is attracting Israeli and American response against vital and strategic locations inside Yemen. And recently, there has been a more targeting of by Israel to the military bases, the platforms, and even the basis of the Houthi and Yemeni infrastructure, military infrastructure. This is demolishing even the infrastructure inside Sana'a, the capital, and eliminating some of the Yemeni leaders, as Israel is willing to continue escalation against the Houthis. And if there is a deal between Hamas and Israel, Houthis would not have any justification to continue the attacks, and Israel might stop attacking Sana'a and Hodeidah at that time.
Right. How do you or how do the Houthis' action reflect broader regional tensions and proxy conflicts involving Iran and its adversaries?
Let's speak frankly that the Houthis are the last pocket of resistance and the last arm of Iran in the region. Hamas and Jihad have been eliminated in Gaza. 90% of the military capabilities of Hamas and Jihad have been eliminated by the Israeli warfare. Hezbollah, the bigger arm of Iran in the region that used to have huge armament and huge intelligence, has been penetrated and was hit with heavy blows since last September. There has been great losses for Hezbollah. The Syrian state in this was a platform for the allies to Iran in Syria for years, but this has been also eliminated with the fall of Bashar al-Assad regime. So the very last pocket is that of the Houthis in Yemen, and US and Israel are keen to weaken this last arm of Iran and eliminating the Houthi capabilities. In my estimate, the upcoming days will show how things evolve, and there will be more American and Israeli attacks on the Houthis under Trump, and there will be more targeting of the leaders of Houthis, pushing them out of Sana'a. But the lack of intel by Israel, because it is busy with Gaza and Lebanon, is affecting Israeli decisions, and because also the Houthis are 1,700 kilometers away. Yet I believe that the Americans will give the intel to Israel in order to deal with the Houthis and to shift the attacks on the Houthis after Trump comes to the office in the White House. And thus Israel and the United States will be more focused to attack Iran by the middle of 2025.
Right. From your point of view, how will the Houthis' intensified missile attacks on Israel reflect on the Middle Eastern geopolitics?
Unfortunately, these practices by the Houthis led to huge economic losses to all the countries that are on the Red Sea. Even for us in Egypt, as the Egyptian president Sisi said, there has been losses regarding the revenues of the Suez Canal. Like 60% is down, around $7 billion of losses because of the tension in the Red Sea, and also because of the decrease of the global trade in the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb. This has affected Egypt. Many countries in the region are also affected, but with a less impact. Yes, the Houthi-Israeli escalation will continue for a while. Maybe before the first half of the 2025, there will be a shift in how the Americans deal with the Houthis, because there has been statements by the Israeli Defense Minister Katz and the Prime Minister Netanyahu. He says, will we be more dedicated to deal with the Houthis, to eliminate it the way we did with Hezbollah and Hamas and Jihad. So these negative repercussions will negatively impact the security of the Middle East and Red Sea, and Iran might intervene, leading to a huge military confrontation, and the region will see an escalation beyond what we have seen before since Gaza October 2023.
Now, from your point of view, sir, do the Houthis' attacks on Israel-linked ships in the Red Sea reflect an alignment with Iran's regional objectives?
For sure, Iran is much willing, after losing many fronts in Gaza, Syria, and South Lebanon. Iran wants to continue using the Houthis as the last arm of Iran to attack Israel. They will provide Houthis with all logistics and all weaponry, with the drones and missiles that are being smuggled by the sea to the Houthis, and there will continue to be Iranian experts in Sana'a to provide assistance to Houthis and Ansarullah. This will lead to more tension in the region, and the Houthis will be utilized by Iran to gain some things against Israel by the missiles being launched. But so far, it did not make much of an impact. And Iran wants to deter the Israeli threats to Tehran by using the Houthis, so as Iran will be more dedicated to accelerate using, developing their nuclear program and maybe a nuclear weapon. So they are trying to do that, but this might win some time for Iran. But Trump and the Israeli administration will not allow Iran to use their arms, including Houthis, to build a nuclear bomb, and things will be different when Trump comes to office, and it will be different when it harms more punishment of Iran, maybe through an Israeli-American military operation against Iran. This will escalate more tension in the new Middle East.
Sam, how, from your point of view, or what exactly were the implications of Houthis saying that they are integrating into the axis of resistance for Middle Eastern alliances?
Unfortunately, the axis of resistance has been hit hard, and in my estimate, the Iranian project in the region has failed. Hezbollah lost a lot, and it was the strongest arm for Iran against Israel. Hezbollah was the real spearhead against Israel. Hezbollah lost a lot in the first and second generation of leaders, including Hassan Nasrallah and many military leaders. And much of the capabilities of Hezbollah has been destroyed. Hamas and Jihad were also attacked in Gaza, and the resistance allied to Iran in Syria has been dismantled by the fall of the Syrian regime after HTC came to power and Ahmad al-Shara came to power. So Syria is not utilized anymore by Iran. The Houthis are not as strong as Hamas and as Hezbollah. It is just relying on the long distance between them and Israel and the poor intel to Israel. So I believe still that it will be a challenge to Israel to get more intel to attack the Houthis, but the Americans will furnish that at one point in order to help Israel against the Houthis. The Houthi axis cannot stand alone against Israel and the American-British military might. It will not be able to face all that. The drones and the ballistic missiles will not be much of an impact on Israel. Iran will have to accept a new reality with Trump, or to have a real war alarm in the region between Iran and its adversaries. So Israel wants to hit the Houthis now and then hit Iran.
Well, that remains to be seen. That was Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri, an editorial director in Al-Ahram newspaper. We thank you so much for your insights. And U.S. Central Command CENTCOM has released footages of its December 31st strikes targeting Houthi sites in Yemen, focusing on a command center, missile storage and drone facilities in Sana'a and coastal areas under rebel control. These strikes were aimed at disrupting Houthi attacks on U.S. Navy ships and merchant vessels in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. The Times of Israel has reported that U.S. Navy and Air Force aircraft further neutralized a coastal radar site, 7 cruise missiles, and attacked drones over the Red Sea with no reported damage or injuries. These strikes were part of a coordinated U.S. response involving Tomahawk missiles launched from destroyers in the Red Sea, targeting Houthi assets. To shed the light about the recent U.S. strikes on Yemen, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Ashraf Abul Houlan, editorial director of Al Ahram newspaper. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Qnews. And what are the potential global economic repercussions of the Houthi attacks disrupting Red Sea shipping lanes?
For sure, there is an impact on the Red Sea, and the Red Sea is affecting the navigation, and it's also affecting the revenues from the Suez Canal. Many of the ships are not using the Suez Canal and going to alternative routes like the longer routes. Egypt has lost billions of dollars because of these Houthi attacks.
Now, how might the Houthis' expanded attacks on international shipping impact the global trade routes?
I believe that the Houthis have reached to the maximum limit of their harm to the global economy and the global trade, and maybe the hits on them by the American-British attacks and the Israeli attacks, maybe this will be affecting their capabilities to further disrupt the navigation. Maybe the Houthis are still utilizing the reserves of the missiles and weapons they had from Iran, but their capability to manufacture more weapons is not very likely. They are more relying on the Iranian experts and the Iranian ones who assist them in Yemen, whether manufacturing the missiles inside Yemen or operating the platforms for launching the missiles. But I believe that the latest attacks on the Houthis and the latest hits on their fuel reserves, electricity, and so is disrupting the Houthis. The number of attacks by the Houthis against the navigating ships is much decreased, and probably in the near future there will be more decrease in their attacks, and maybe there will be a decisive hit on the Houthis, whether by US and Britain or by Israel. I think this is being planned now. So it is not like the Israelis it's not like the Israelis don't have a bank of targets in Yemen. They have, and maybe they are trying to find the most appropriate time to attack. And there might be plans to assist the legitimate government in Yemen to topple the rule of the Houthis by carpet bombing of the Houthis.
But despite all what you've said respectively here, and despite all those attacks by world alliances, but Houthis' persistent attacks challenge Israel's image as a regional military powerhouse.
The Houthis have got a lot of reserves of of missiles hidden in the caves and in the mountains, a lot of hidden platforms. So they were using these assets in these platforms. But this doesn't mean that these capabilities will last forever, because even the ability of the Iranians to convey the weapons and the components of the missiles to the Houthis or to their other allies in the region is much decreased now. We know that Iran at one point was establishing factories for missiles and drones in Yemen and Syria. And these factories by Iran have been destroyed recently. The Iranian experts are now fearing for their own lives in the region. So even if the Houthis has got a reservoir of missiles, it will be depleted at one point. The Houthis don't have air defenses, and the missiles they launch are not much affecting Israel. It is just making very limited impact. But the Israeli anti-missile defenses are working against these missiles. But the impact on the Houthis by the American and British attacks is much greater than what is there. And the Yemenis are also, as people, suffering from this.
Indeed, they are. But so far, the Houthis' mockery of Western missile defense systems affect perception or the perceptions of the US military capabilities in the regions. That small power is standing to challenge those great powers.
I believe that it's more of a propaganda by the Houthi side, because it did not affect the Israeli aggression on Gaza, and it did not affect Israel as such. It only made a propaganda impact. But in the end, the targets being attacked are inside Yemen, and it is a loss for the capabilities of the Yemeni people and the Yemeni population. So attacking Israel by missiles and drones, not actually making a real loss inside Israel or a real damage inside Israel, is pointless, because the attacks from Israel is really demolishing Yemen's capabilities. Maybe the nationalists and Islamists feel happy that they see Israel being threatened and the Israelis are going to the shelters. But in reality, there are no real impact and no real losses inside Israel. There is more impact on Egypt by harming the revenues of the Suez Canal and the countries that are affected when their ships are attacked. And Israel wants to finish and end the resistance axis, and the ones who pay the price are the Yemeni people in the end.
Indeed. From another perspective, how do the Houthis' recent military actions impact humanitarian efforts and civilian populations in Yemen?
The attacks will really impact the Yemeni civilians. At least, most recently, there has been a demolition of 2 electricity stations in Sana'a, and there has been harm to the Hodeidah port, the Sana'a airport, and this affects the civilians in Yemen. And there was also a demolition of warehouses of fuel, and this affects the Yemenis. But the effect on the military might of the Houthis, it happened. It actually happened, because without fuel and without electricity, how will the factories that are assembling the Iranian missiles work? They cannot.
Right. That was Mr. Ashraf Abul Houl, editorial director in Al Ahram newspaper. We thank you so much for your insights and your analysis. And I guess that brings us to the end of our special coverage for this hour. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.